Hello, Phil.
Good morning, fellas. Yeah, they're still talking about us in Florence, Italy. So I appreciate you mentioning us stateside. So maybe we could grow our profile here.
I'm on the Reddit page right now. I can see what they're still gossiping about you guys. All right. So when did you get down to Indianapolis?
I got here last night.
Okay.
Took a flight last night. Bunch of media people, bunch of Patriots people. It seems like everybody's in last 24 hours or so.
Now, the value of being at the Combine is not so much you watching the Combine, correct? It's what goes on after the Combine, like at night and stuff like that. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, it's the best networking opportunity we have all year in the league for those of us who cover a team or cover the entirety of the league, because everybody's here. Now, it's not exactly the same as it used to be in terms of everybody, quote unquote, being here. A lot of coaching staffs choose not to come, and this is something Sean McVay started a few years ago, and it seems like the Patriots have followed suit. I don't think there's going to be a big contingent of Patriots coaches here. In fact, I think the vast majority of them will stay in New England as they get their stuff together. It's a new staff, and so they've got a lot to do when it comes to logistics sort of behind the scenes, and they'll get their chance to interview prospects and get to know them a little bit better at pro days and workouts and top 30 visits and Zoom calls and things of that nature. So not going to be a lot of Patriots coaches here, but Mike Vrabel will be here. I think the special teams guys will be here. And yeah, it's not watching the players at all. Talking to the players is interesting, seeing how they handle the media. That's one thing that we'll be able to do this week. But for the most part, it's meeting new people, seeing people that you don't see really all year, except for here in Indianapolis, but you talk to maybe on the phone all year. That's really the value of being here in Indy.
Have you ever been shocked just like late at night how much someone was letting you know? Like they were very loose-lipped and they were saying things you were like, oh, Jesus. Like, I didn't expect this to happen.
Yeah. Yes. It's happened quite a bit because the bars are open pretty late, Fred, and people start to say some interesting things depending on how late you're out with them. Now, I don't find it's like a great policy to then all of a sudden turn around and turn that into a headline.
No, but it gives you insight that maybe you could use when you judge information going forward.
It'll get you to poke around in places you weren't poking around in.
No, you're not going to directly go like, hey, this guy told me when he was wasted at a bar. That would ruin all your sources. But when you can disseminate information, you get through a different prism when you have found the truth from the guy's mouth.
Perfectly and eloquently put by you, Fred. Yes.
Two appearances where you complimented me, which is going to get you much more. I'm going to have Rick give you a raise at some point.
Phil, did we
get glamour shots of you last week, by the way?
No, this Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday we'll get
this Thursday. Okay, good.
Yeah, glamour shots by Deb. Have you also woken up the next morning and said to yourself, I can't believe what I divulged last night? I can't believe the secrets that I spilled that I was told in confidence?
No, that would never happen to me, Hardy. I'm a professional.
I can't believe I got up with Mr. Fred in that condition at St. Elmo's.
Took the stage at the Slippery Noodle at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that.
I mean, I don't even know what I said. I was ranting about the government. That's all I remember.
It is interesting, the people you'll see. Like, I remember a few years ago, this was, it wasn't one of my first combines, but I don't know, it was maybe third or fourth. And Richard Sherman at the time was one of the leaders of the NFLPA. And I remember being just at a bar, and Richard Sherman just plops down right next to me by himself at the bar, pissed off about how some players' union meeting had gone. And he and I sat there and spoke for hours. And he was great. And so, like, there are little weird interactions like that you sort of wake up the next day and be like, that was odd. I didn't see that happening last night, but it does. So that's what makes it such a great place.
All right. So to what degree do minds get changed at this combine, do you think, Phil? I mean, you got a pretty good idea of who these players are and what they're going to be. I mean, how much does the needle, or can the needle actually move based on what people see this week?
It can. I think it's really sort of a cross-checking exercise. It's just, one layer of an extensive, obviously, evaluation process. And so, you played that sound of me talking about Will Campbell, the offensive lineman from LSU, coming into the segment here. Like, he has something to lose this week, quite frankly. And if he shows up and his arms don't measure at least 33 inches, he might see his spot in the draft fall. And that, you could say that's fair or unfair based on, the size of, essentially a thumbnail. Like if he's 32 3/4 as opposed to 33 even. But there are teams have thresholds. Teams have standards.
I keep reading. I keep reading about.
Adhere to.
I know. I keep reading about that quarter inch, the 33 to a 33 1/4 inch length for.
It matters apparently.
Yeah. How? Come on.
Well, I don't know about 33 to 33 1/4, but I do think if your first two numbers on your arm length are 32, then teams just get wary about playing you at tackle.
Yeah, it's a difference.
And it's guys that have been in the league a long time, and they've got certain things that they're looking for. And Bill Parcells very famously once said, if you start making exceptions on guys when it comes to things like arm length, I would add, then pretty soon you've got an entire team full of exceptions. So if he can get to 33, then I think that'll make teams, honestly, I think it'll make teams a lot more comfortable about keeping him at tackle, which would be big for him.
Well, I mean, it's like that in baseball, too. I mean, if you got a pitcher, two pitchers that throw 95, and one of them's a big horse of a guy and the other one's a little guy, you're much more concerned about the little guy's arm falling off. I mean, that's why Crochet, I thought, was such a good trade piece, because he's
enormous.
He's enormous. And then you get Sale, whose mechanics are all weird and everything is screwing his arm up. All right, look, you were talking, we played audio of you talking about Tee Higgins. You don't think, even if Cincinnati franchises him, that necessarily they're keeping him?
So, yeah, I can tell you that's how people in the league feel. I've spoken to people who say, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it, Tee Higgins playing for the Cincinnati Bengals in 2025. Now, it does sound like, based on the reports, that they are set on using the franchise tag on him, and they are set on getting something for him prior to getting whatever comp pick that they would get for him and leaving via free agency. So that to me would, we're talking about the Patriots a lot here, obviously. To me, that would probably take the Patriots out of the Tee Higgins sweepstakes if he gets tagged and traded. And so I don't necessarily think he's coming to New England either way. I just am not sure that he's not going to be available. And if he is, and you're the Patriots and you want to get creative, then that's on you. I mean, they've got more than enough money to spend to be able to make something like that happen. If they did want to trade, do they want to give up the draft capital that would be required?
Well, that's the question.
In a trade?
That's the question to you. You people want Tee Higgins, and when money's the only factor, that's great. Are you willing to give up draft capital to get Tee Higgins? Because
I don't think they will be.
Yeah,
I don't think they will be.
Yeah, right. Because go ahead.
No, I think they know that what the entire league sees right now, and this is just from talking to coaches, scouts over the course of the last week and a half, is that it's a really thin free agent class at receiver and offensive line, which for the Patriots obviously is terrible news. It's strong at linebacker, corner, and safety, which, whoop-de-doo if you're New England. Like, those aren't massive needs for you. And so I think where we start to talk about whether it's Tee Higgins or DK Metcalf and making a trade for him, or waiting for Devontae Adams to hit free agency and paying him big dollars for a couple of years to try to entice him to come to New England, I think they're going to have to get creative to find their number one receiver. Because unless somehow Travis Hunter falls to them at number 4, which is possible, and I view him as a number one receiver type of talent. I do. I don't think everyone does, but I do. I think a lot of people in the league see him as a number one corner who could play some receiver for you. I would encourage him to play receiver because I think he could be really, really good. If that doesn't happen, you're not getting a number one. You're just not. They're not in the draft, and they're not in free agency. And so you do have to start to move some pieces around and maybe be willing to do a hard thing and make a tough trade if you really feel like you need that piece. And I do. So I'm fascinated to see how they handle that position. There are people, guys, who are, last thing I would just say on Patriots receivers, again, over the course of the last week or so, just trying to get a feel for how the league looks at their roster. And I would say there are a lot of Pop Douglas fans out there. Yeah. And I think he's sort of, the shine has kind of come off on him over the course of last year here locally because he just didn't have a great year. But there are others who have studied and scouted the Patriots closely and said to me, they just did not use that guy correctly. He's one of their best players. And so, maybe you have a piece there that people here in New England, when they look at that receiver room and they say, oh, you got to blow the entire thing up. maybe they have a piece there in Pop Douglas that under a new offensive coordinator and Josh McDaniels will be able to be leveraged in a little bit different way.
If you are running the Patriots, Phil, how much draft capital are you willing to send out to bring in a number one receiver or a top flight tackle or something like that because the draft is so thin?
I would think about trading a second. I would. It depends on who it is.
Well, if you get Metcalf, is he still going to be any good when you're good? That's the question. Your second-round pick would be. That's what you got to. Well, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like if DK Metcalf, Phil, I'll just tell you what my thoughts are, and then you can tell me that I'm stupid. Is that I can see spending on the offensive line in the offseason because there's a real-time advantage to that. If nothing else, May doesn't fall into bad habits. He's not running for his life. He's not getting hurt. Like there's a bunch of advantages to that. So I can justify that now, correct? If I start giving up capital to get a receiver, that's a nice thing to have, and maybe you win an extra game. But by the time any receiver that I'm going to be able to get is going to be older, or they're going to have a flaw or an injury history, right? You could agree with that. So why would I get someone who's going to be at their best right now and not still at their best in 3 years?
I would say because the product has been so bad, it's time to start trying to be good right now. It's been 5 years. They don't have a guy who can catch the football consistently for them or create an explosive play.
Right. No, I get that it hurts Drake May, but it doesn't hurt him in the same way that not being protected does and not having time to throw.
And that's true. Fred, you can't I agree with you. If your priority is receiver and you let offensive line fall by the wayside in the process, that's malpractice. But they should be able to do both. There's no reason you can't sign Ronnie Stanley. Ronnie Stanley is very close to free agency. I don't know if he's going to shake free from Baltimore, but I do know everybody looks at him and looks at the Patriots and looks at their needs and say, how could they not go after that guy and be aggressive and get him? And so if you get a Ronnie Stanley, like I'm over the well, it's going to be another 4 years before they're any good. Like they need to start getting aggressive. They have a young quarterback on a rookie contract. It's time to spend money. It's time to try. I'm not saying you're going to do this. You're not going to do this in all likelihood. 99% chance you're not going to be able to do what Washington did last year. But that's what you should be shooting for. You really should be.
But by spending money, I'm talking about giving up assets, future assets, to win now. That doesn't seem spending money. Spend all the money you want, but when you're talking about giving up second round picks,
draft capital,
when you're this needy at every position, that's where I would get nervous about doing that.
Phil, are you out on Chris Godwin?
Sorry, go ahead, Kendra.
Are you out on Chris Godwin? Is that a no for you? I know he has an injury history.
Yeah.
Tampa may not let him get free. Tampa's still trying to negotiate a contract.
Yeah, but his offensive coordinator's gone now.
That's what concerns teams about him is they look at him and they say, he is, in terms of his talent, I talked to an offensive coordinator the other day who said he would rather have him talent-wise, if he was healthy and on the field, would rather have him than Tee Higgins. But the injury factor is such a significant factor with him. It's really hard to invest a big number in someone like that. Now, maybe the number's not massive. Maybe it's not prohibitive for somebody like him because the situation is that he's sort of, he's imperfect because of his health. So I wouldn't be I'm not out on really anybody at the right price. And I think that's sort of the approach the Patriots should take. Like even a tackle, Jedrick Wills is a guy who's been a disappointment in Cleveland. I know people question sort of his want to and his love of football. He was a top 10 pick. He's big. He's played left tackle. Vrabel was there with him in Cleveland last year. Like, you can't be investing, in my opinion, and in the opinion of people that I've spoken to, you can't be investing big dollars in somebody like that because he's a free agent this offseason, because that could go really, really wrong for you. But at the right price on a short-term deal, like, you can't afford to say no to potential helpful pieces if you're the Patriots. And on the second round pick thing, Fred, I would just say if it's the right guy, and I don't know if DK Metcalf is the right guy, so I don't have a great name for you. But in terms of the approach, They need to get aggressive. They need to get creative. I'm really interested to see what Mike Vrabel says to us at 10:15 this morning about how he views this season going, because I don't think he can stand at the podium and say, hey, we've got a lot of work to do. We're going to ask our fan base to be patient. This is going to take a lot of time. That's probably the correct thing to say, but it's been a while since they've been good.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years of that already, whether implied or outright said, and it can't be said again. Even if that is where they're at, he can't say that.
The idea of another rebuild year where you're just going to eat it for 17 weeks because, well, shrug of the shoulders, look at us, sorry, feel bad for us, our roster stinks, you can't expect much from us. Like, that's not going to play.
You don't have to say it, but if you try to turn the roster over in 1 year, that's a fool's errand. You might pop up 1 year. The history of that is well documented. You go up 1 year, you have one bump year, and then it's like a dead cat bounce. You have that one up year, and then the whole thing falls apart again.
I've already seen it.
So I would be, and you already saw it here, so I'd be careful about that. Look, Phil, we could talk to you all day. We've already gone late with you. We'll let you get back to your networking and drinking and crack smoking and everything else. Phil Perry from NBC Sports Boston. Thank you, Phil.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.